Auburn coming off a big win over Mississippi State in Week 5 of the college football season. Now it's on to Week 6. Ole Miss at Jordan-Hare Stadium. And joining me now on the Plains, James Crepea, with some thoughts from Gus Malzahn's press conference this week. And we'll start with the running backs. Speaking of the running back rotation, it's been guys mixing in and out. Obviously, Cam Petway, Kerryon Johnson getting the bulk of the carries, but they've been dealing with some injuries. Do we expect to see more of a rotation to try to keep these guys healthy? What are your thoughts?
Well, all three of Auburn's top three running backs have been dealing with injuries at different points this season. Petway misses the game against Missouri, might as well have missed the game against Mississippi State. Only had, I think, 3 carries, had the fumble on one. Clearly is a shell of himself right now, physically speaking. And it has to be quite disappointing for Cam Petway. He was suspended for the opener. He's had these issues the last couple of weeks. This is somebody who wanted to break the program record for rushing. It would take a miracle for him to pull that off at this point in the season. So it's now about, yes, getting him healthy, getting his left ankle healthy, getting his heel healthy in order enough just to be able to participate and be an effective running back for this team right now. Kerryon Johnson, he had the hamstring injury in the opener, missed a couple of games, has come back, been their leading, leading rusher the last 2 weeks. Even though he didn't lead them in yards against Missouri, he had 5 touchdowns. This last week, he leads them against Mississippi State. And Cam Martin, we saw him be effective in the opener, went missing for a couple of weeks, saw him do well against Missouri. He was banged up at the end of that game. We didn't see him against Mississippi State. So the top 3 running backs are all dealing with injuries of some kind. But the good news is that Kerryon was able to perform as he did for back-to-back weeks. He feels like he's about 90 or so percent. Petway will just have to see. I think it would bear to reason that he could be kept out for precautionary reasons. It would be good if he could able to take part in any capacity, frankly, for this backfield. As you alluded to, you need to be able to take a little bit of stress off of each one of these guys individually if they're all dealing with injuries. But Devin Barrett and Malik Miller both got in the game late. You've seen Barrett take on more of a role here the last couple of weeks. I think he could be the next back in line to take on a bigger role if any of the top 3 are hurt.
Okay, let's take a look at this Ole Miss opponent. Obviously got blown out this past weekend against Alabama. Now they come to Jordan-Hare Stadium. What's overall the matchup look like between these two teams, and especially when Auburn's coming off a big win and then this dominant blowout against Alabama, motivating the players? How is Gus Malzahn getting these guys ready?
Well, Malzahn has continued to reiterate that he feels that every week is basically independent of itself and that you can't look at the results of last week in the SEC as an indicator of what's going to happen this week. Of course, to most fans and most observers of the sport, that's just nonsense and that doesn't make any sense. You can't. It's one thing to say if it was a close game, win or loss. When somebody loses 66-3, there's just no way that anybody's going to put much stock in Ole Miss being much of a viable team to knock off Auburn here. They are a 3-touchdown favorite. There's a reason for that. That said, do I think that Ole Miss still has some offensive talent? Well, that's clear. They do have Shea Patterson. They are going to be a threat offensively. But clearly they are not on paper as talented a team, not only as Alabama, who just crushed them, they're not as talented a team as Auburn, who very well could dole out almost the same kind of punishment this week.
All right, James, when you look at the overall performance and landscape of this Auburn football team, a lot of people wanted to write them off after they lost to Clemson, the defending national champions. And as we've seen, Clemson has gotten better and better each week, as has Auburn, getting a big win over Mississippi State, the previous week over Missouri. Just overall, the mood of this team, but really, going into this, what are the fans saying? What is everybody feeling now surrounding this team as they've shown more success and offensive performance than we saw a few weeks ago?
Well, I don't think that the team was deterred in any way by the performance overall at Clemson, or the loss, I should say. But offensively, the performance was brutal, and that's why you got a lot of reporting about it and national perception about that game. Being as it was 117 yards of offense, it was 11 sacks. There were a lot of issues in that game. The defense has performed great. The defense performed great against Clemson, performed great all season. What they've been achieving defensively, they're the only team in America to not allow more than 14 points in a game so far this season. That's outstanding. But the offensive woes against Clemson, clearly it looks like much of that has been corrected. But you weren't sure against Mercer or against Missouri if that was the case because, frankly, those are clearly inferior competition. The first sign that the offense really is turning a corner here came last week against Mississippi State, who at least came in with, on paper, a defense that was achieving things, particularly in the passing game, that they hadn't achieved the year before. They looked to be a formidable opponent. They were a ranked team. That's where you start to have the indicator. But that said, I think a lot of fans, a lot of people felt that the worst-case scenario for Auburn was to be 5-1 at the midpoint of the season, and it looks like that's going to be the case. It's the second half with 3 straight road games, starting with LSU in a couple of weeks, where that game now looks far more winnable than it did, in the offseason. But Auburn hasn't won at LSU since 1999. That's still going to be a tough place to play and a tough place to win, even though Troy just did it this past week, and LSU is a reeling program right now. But that's the first of 3 straight road games, and obviously we know that they have to still finish with Georgia and Alabama, who also appear to be 2 of the other 3 top teams in the SEC right now.
All right, James, thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate it. Auburn kicking off at Jordan-Hare Stadium against Ole Miss, 11 o'clock kickoff, the first early kickoff of the season. Looking forward to that. For all your news and analysis on the Auburn Tigers, you can visit us on AL.com.